Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Apologies, starting a little later than usual. As usual, things are going chaotic for me and my world's upside down and all yada yada yada. But the good news, I have new Mountain Dew. So, or at least there's green on this bottle. You just can't tell. Okay, so tonight we're gonna do something a little different. I did WPF and my lovely tree view for the last I don't know 5 streams, something like that. Nikolai, you've been awesome. Thank you. I am gonna try that expansion stuff that we were messaging about. See how that plays out. So hopefully, multi-select tree view and WPF coming soon. Here's hoping. We've been having to do some magic to dodge some weird stuff, but tonight we are going to play with a library from IntelliTect called Coalesce. This is a library designed to make building out ASP.NET Core applications with Vue.js a whole heck of a lot easier and faster, because normally there's a lot of boilerplate and plumbing, and so this is designed to not do that. Fair warning, I don't know it very well, so I brought help. Some of them are in the chat. Joe's sitting on the call here in a moment, and he's going to join us. Speaking of Joe, welcome.
Howdy, glad to be here. Blind leading the blind here on Coalesce.
I
Should
don't
be
mind if
fun.
it's blind leading blind. Joe, despite what he will tell you, is actually developer extraordinaire. He runs the Spokane Python user group. So if anybody is interested in Python related stuff, I realize generally I do. Hang on, I can't copy and paste today. Oh, I can't copy and paste because my browser's not responding. This is exciting. Joe, I might need you to put a link in the chat for me. This is not a good start. Apparently Edge has decided that it hates me and would like to die. So thank you. Um, so he runs .NET user group and is hopefully going to be the voice of sanity for me tonight once my browser's done crashing. Oh, good. One other announcement because I feel like I need to correct something that I said on the last couple streams. So Hacktoberfest is now live. We are in October. This is great. This is awesome. Unlike previous years, and I didn't realize this until this last week, they are not doing the usual T-shirt and stickers that they have done in years past. So if you are interested in longer explanations, I'm just going to say it's the rewards for it are not like in years past. There's the longer explanation. People can read and do all of that stuff. Oh, one last thing I need to plug because it's very exciting and I'm happy about it. GitCon is coming up at the end of the month. Yay. More importantly, scroll, scroll, scroll. Hey, look, Sean Astin. Scroll, 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 scroll.
Oh,
Me. So I have a session at GitCon. You might see me. They've got some kind of like in between videos plugging around. Here's really hoping that my Christmas squirrel, Robert Dr. Frankenstein, makes it in. Really hoping that he does. If that sentence doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. It doesn't make sense to most people, but go to GitCon, it might make more sense. I am told it's an engaging visual. Keep that in mind when you're laughing. Okay, Coalesce. Sorry, I didn't warn you about the Christmas squirrel. Because who doesn't use a Christmas squirrel in October? I wasn't told not to use a Christmas squirrel, so I did. Okay, so Coalesce. now that we've thoroughly gone off the rails, this is something that has been built and has gone through several generations. I have a stream that's I think it might be 5 years ago now at this point. Now that I think about it, where with Grant and Andrew kind of covering the basics of Coalesce. The problem is that stream's dated. So I got rid of Grant and Andrew and I brought in Joe because I needed some brain power. And so we are going to walk through this and try and do it. The idea here is I am looking for a specific type of application. In my day job, I spend a lot of time just getting pinged by people with questions. And I usually joke with everybody that I operate a biased priority queue or a bribery queue. It depends on how you want to look at it. Where people can queue up saying that they've got questions or need my help with something. And then it's kind of a first come, first serve, except for I'm biased and I will prioritize people according to, either how I'm feeling that day or what project they're on or what team they're on or how important their request seems. So sometimes people like Joe get forced to wait for hours waiting for me to get back to him while I'm dealing with other stuff because he hasn't been moved high enough up the biased priority queue. So
I think it just means I need to give you more stuff. evidently.
Bias, priority queue, or bribery queue. So the only thing I've done ahead of time is I've gone through this getting started with .NET New install the template. So there is a built-in Vue template. This thing does have an older version of like Knockout. Don't use it. It hasn't been updated in a while. A Vue is apparently the way of the future, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so I also spent a little time and came up with the name of the app of Top Priority because that's the only thing that made sense, and ChatGPT helped. So we are going to kind of walk through the getting started guide that they have, and it's actually like I did this earlier, and it's stupid simple. So make directory, cd in directory, blah blah blah, install template. I trust people can figure that out. .NET New Coalesce Vue. This, I have to admit, this actually blew my mind when we did this. Okay, so we've created a template. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, I'm going to open up VS Code. Now, so Joe, this is as much for you as for everyone else. One of the things that Andrew pointed out to me is that they do have a .vs code directory with an extensions.js right inside the template. So if you're the recommended approach that I was told was use VS Code for all of your Vue stuff. It's better. And I went, okay, I'm too dumb to know any different. But there is a set of recommended extensions that they've dropped in there. So underneath like your extension section, you'll see all these show up under the recommended group, and you can go click, 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 click if you want them. Because
who's recommending Edge? That's got to be a bug.
I think this is coming from VS Code, but I see Copilot, and I don't know why I haven't installed the auto code button yet on VS Code. So we're gonna fix that real quick. That's not on the list, but we're gonna go through and do it. The only other thing I want to change, and this isn't in here, is I did notice if you play around with this too much, the template just pre-cans your database. So underneath, so top down, you've got your solution with some stuff. You've got a web project. You've got a data project. Great, huzzah. Web project contains the webby things. Data project contains your database stuff. This is EF core, all the things. When you gen these though, underneath the web project, the app settings, it always sets your database name to Coalesce Starter DB. I kind of wish this would have defaulted to something more like top priority, right? Because if you gen these twice, you now have two things that kind of do that maneuver because they're both pointed at the same connection string or pointed at a different database rather than local DB or something, but whatever. So I'm going to change that because I didn't like the way that was set up. So minor nitpick. Okay, next we have to do the NPM things because NPM is a thing for web projects apparently. At least that's what I'm told. So we're going to go cd star.web tab, enter, and then npm CI. And this will go through and do all the NPM stuff. And we go, wee. And if I remember right, this is going to be the .NET New template is slightly delayed on a handful of packages. Come on. I want you to know the npm install goes quicker when you aren't streaming with a Teams call running.
I bet.
Okay, and then because a few things are old, we run the recommended npm audit fix to go and fix the things.
You know, I read a really interesting article about how terrible NPM audit is.
Really?
Maybe they fixed it since then, but it was basically like a horrible thing for like keeping track of your actual security vulnerabilities. I'll see if I can find the article.
Yeah, if you can, I'd be interested. The tool told me to run it, so I blindly followed directions because that's what I do. Okay, there is a whole section in here on project structure explaining how everything goes. I'm going to completely ignore all of it. The last thing, and I kind of feel like these steps should have been moved up higher, is if you try to run the app now, you're going to crash because your database doesn't exist and there's no migrations available. So thank you for the link. I'm going to open and put it over here where I can come back to this and read. So in order to actually get the database stood up, you actually need to create an EF core migration. So if we just go cd ... and then cd star.data, and then we will do We need to create an EF migration. So the default data project does come with a single entity already in there, which is great. Like if we go and look, we can see, look at data and models. It does have this application user. As you can see, it's a really advanced thing. I'm not sure how I feel about how they've set up their data annotations for EF Core, but whatever. I will bicker with Andrew on his default template another day. Like, also, why is this not, like, down here? I don't know. Whatever. Little things. Little things. Little things. Okay, so we've done an EF migration add init, and now I think we're ready to go. So, root level .NET build, because that's what we do. We compile the stuffs. And then we're going to go into our web directory because we actually want to run the thing. You could do it from the top, but I just like .NET run. And if all has gone well, we're done. Which I think would be pretty cool. Okay, so it launches. And then the important thing is this now listening on up here. We click it. We have it up!
Beautiful.
I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I don't know about you. So it's got the Vue.js-y stuff, so responsive design and all that kind of coolness, which is kind of slick. There's admin pages. We can go into our application user and we can create one. And in honor of you, Joe, the first one will be called Joe. You'll note it auto-saved for me. We'll make another one just so we can compare. Kevin, that seems like an appropriate name. We've got those in there. There's a custom page example where it's showing us user ID. Joe changed. I don't know if that one actually updates it. See, it did. Look at that. We can edit you because why not? And we've got all of this stuff. There's even this cool security overview page in case you want to audit, you know, who has access to everything. So it is worth calling out that in the docs, it very much says right after you get going that one of the first things to do is, where is it? Is actually going through and setting up auth, because by default all of the endpoints are auth, but the .NET new template plugs in a fake auth just so that it works, but you should turn on real auth at some point with something. So we'll see how that goes.
So when you say fake auth, is that like every, like,
Yeah, I was trying to.
it just automatically authenticates you or something?
Yeah, I was trying to look and see where it was. Was it down here in security? It was somewhere in the getting started bit, and I'm. Oh, I know where it was. It was in my own app. Where did my? I need my URL. Closed it. 5. Is that it? There we go. Here in the home page, it told me what to do. So
Oh, nice.
the home page in the app it generates tells you what to do next. I knew I read it somewhere. So if you get this far and you haven't done the EF migration, these 2 pages are going to fail on you with some database errors. So in theory, you should follow directions. I believe why they don't gen the migration up front is because if people didn't want that entity, they would then have to go and remove the migration, remove the entity, and it was deemed better to make people do this. I'm torn. I don't know. I get it. But so these are implement proper authentication. So there are other options for being able to set these up depending on how you want to do your identity and appropriate links out to the docs pages. So depending on how you want your users to auth. But his call out is in program CS and remove the dummy authentication, so we can probably go look at that. Assuming I'm going to find something about it in here. Yeah, so Dummy authentication for initial development. So he's just doing an app.use and always setting everything to having this development user. So great.
Nice.
Okay, cool.
It works.
Sweet. Okay, so let's go actually build something. Okay, so as I understand it, we want to build out a, like I said, a biased priority queue. So I almost need, what do we call it? A ticket? You call an individual item. I'm trying to think, when you go into the DMV and they say take a number, what do you call that thing?
I like ticket
Ticket. Excellent.
or bribery.
And bribery. Well,
Maybe that's a
bribery
follow up.
amount, I think that's a property of ticket. Let's see, ticket ID. You can stick with ints for now. I mean, there's a question on tenancy of this as well, but you know, let's see. Required public string. I don't know. I'm actually wondering if maybe we'll. You know what? We're just gonna do. Yeah, we'll do required, and then we'll do. Oh, I now just realized my required. By not doing the nullable like that, it's gonna bite me if I don't do this. String requester name, I guess. I don't know what you call it. And then public string request. I don't know. The please help me line. Sure, good enough. I think for now.
I like it.
Okay, we need to add it to our DB context. We're gonna do this. Gonna do this.
Do you need, since it's like a priority queue, do you need a timestamp? Some sort of.
That's a good question. It probably should have something like that on it.
Maybe if it's been fulfilled, or are you assuming you're just deleting these?
No, you make a good point, because it is mildly useful for me to keep these things around so that I can remember at the end of the day what the heck I did.
Yeah.
So I like that. Public, maybe a bool is completed.
Yeah. I guess if you want to get real fancy, you could have a maybe when it was created by the requester, as well as when it was like fulfilled by you, or something. I suppose you could probably get a lot of date times if, depending the granularity. Like if it would help you to see when you started helping someone with something, and then when you finished it for like time tracking purposes.
Oh yeah, yeah. See, you are on point. I like this. So what do you call that? Like started? Like what do you call it when you start helping the person?
Start request date time, maybe. Started. I don't start request.
Yeah, we'll go with it. I like it. And obviously nullable because it and actually if we're gonna do completed date time, I don't really need an is completed.
Oh, true.
Right? Though I am a little curious what I know Coalesce has some magic around these. So with Coalesce you build the entities and it does utter magic. We'll see it in a second. Is not null. I'm gonna do this. I don't know what it does with this. I'm kind of.
I'd be curious to see if it exposes that by default.
Yeah. Let's.
Would you want, just for the sake of consistency, you've got start request date time and then completed date time? Would you want to? Seems like they would both have request or neither.
Oh yeah.
What's the hardest things in software? Naming things.
Well, there's only two things that are hard in computer science: cache invalidation, naming things, and then obviously off by one errors.
I like it.
At least that's what I'm told. Okay. Perfect.
I think Kenny has a shirt that says that.
I think he's got a lot of great ones. Okay. I think we're good here. For people unfamiliar, naming the property like this, EF Core is going to pick this up as a PK because class name ends with ID is common convention. So we need to call this tickets. And I think this is all we do, right? I think this is it. Okay, so those people confused, we come back here, we look at the docs, and the docs say run .NET Coalesce in the web projects root directory. And as we are creatures of habit and follow directions, we'll stop our running application. We'll run .NET Coalesce, which does magic and various other things. And you can see we got a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm just happy already. So we've got web stuff, models, view models, metadata. Let's go look at all this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful stuff. Okay, so I think we're going to go, we go web. No, it's API controllers. We've got a ticket controller that now has all your CRUD type stuff. Count list, count, save, delete. And this is why auth is important, because you can decorate up your entities with stuff so that, you know, maybe only certain users can list or delete or whatever. Like in my case, I'm probably going to want an admin type user, i.e. me. That's the only one who can, you know, delete and at some point edit.
Does Coalesce does it come built in with the concept of like either groups or roles? Or does it just have permissions?
Good question. I wanted to immediately say yes, but I'm realizing but I'm realizing I should double check that before I put my foot all the way in my mouth. Because these are all the validations. Where is the link back?
The attribute-based security works from roles, i.e. claims principal.
Is in role. Ah, wonderful.
Do we know who this is?
No, but I'm going to go with somebody smarter than me.
Is it the man himself, the creator? I don't know.
I don't think Grant watches my stream.
Oh, the second creator.
You may find that I'm suspiciously knowledgeable about this framework. Okay, based upon that sense of humor, I'm going to guess that yes, it is the man himself. Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay, so we've got that. We've got that. Now, I would like to go through. I think let's just have this thing. Okay, so it did the generated guy there. That's the controller. It generated some. Where's this? Web models generated. So it generated a DTO. So for people not familiar with that thing, DTO is just data transfer object. It basically just means something that goes back and forth on the wire is oftentimes what it gets used for. You can see it does some mapping stuff. And I believe this mapping stuff will do various things. Like if you have properties on your database entity that you don't want sent on the wire, like maybe it's sensitive and it shouldn't be sent on the wire, this can be filtered out there, which is great. Okay. And then on the website, we end up with, let's see, metadata, view models, and an API client. So let's go. I'm already confused where I'm at. API clients. Oh, so it generates everything into. Got it. So there's the ticket API client. So we've got a nice TypeScripty thing that has all of the needful. Lovely. Models GTS. We've got a TypeScript version of ticket, I assume. Great. It looks kind of like what we would expect.
It gave you is completed.
Interesting. I assume it's smart enough to realize that it's a property with only a getter and not a setter and won't allow me to assign it. I think it's probably smart enough.
Interesting that it basically makes everything nullable.
It's also interesting that I'm going to have to go and play with this. Descendants usually comes with an A. You can assign it in TypeScript, but you can't do anything. Makes sense. I think it's nullable because I think that that more closely aligns with the DTO. I'd be willing to bet
Oh,
because the
yeah,
DTO may not populate all of the properties based upon permissions or otherwise.
sure.
So the TypeScript one mirrors that.
It's kind of an interesting, I guess, pattern where it seems like you sort of have these two routes you can go down when doing stuff like that, where it's you can sort of create like a one-off DTO type object for each specific like request and response,
Mm,
where like you or you could just have one where everything's nullable and then just depending on like what the request and response is doing, like if you're updating a specific single field then maybe everything else is null.
yeah.
But like I've been doing some stuff in Go, and it's like using a gRPC and protobuf, and it's like each individual API endpoint has its own request and response model.
Got
So
it.
there's not really anything like nullable because there's a billions, like a ton of different models.
Got it. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and Andrew comments that part of why it's nullable is because you'll often be building up an instance of this for creating up a form that you're going to
Well,
populate inputs later on.
we, yeah, not Andrew,
Oh, I'm sorry. The person who seems to be
Cybaloris.
uniquely qualified to answer all of our questions. Okay, so let's go here. So I don't know enough views, so you get to help. And
Okay.
actually, let's see if this works. I'm going to try to
Do I
drop you this link.
do I know enough view is the question.
Well, I'm going to try to paste this into our chat and not publicly because that would be really really
Ah,
exciting.
is this the live stream feature? Yes. Jared and I used to use this a lot.
The live share, and it works much better for web-based stuff than say WPF stuff.
Oh, wait. No, hold on. I don't want to join. I want to join with the actual desktop client.
Okay, so I think now I'm an idiot, but from looking at our running app, right? So if I do .NET run like a normal human, okay, I think if I stop closing my tabs, oh, I did leave it open. Okay, I'm thinking what I want to do is I want to slap in just a page over here where we can start to list out our tickets. I'm thinking that's where I want to go first, right? So again, without knowing much about Vue, I see a router TS and I'm immediately inclined to say, well, that's the place where you start, right? I need to define something here that tells me where I'm going, right? So I'm going to call it, I don't know, /requests, name, no, ticket list, right? And I'm going to do something like ticket list dot view. And so now I need to go and build something in here. Again, I know nothing about Vue, so I'm just winging it. You tell me when you know something that I don't.
Well, now I'm kind of curious how much you can get from Coalesce. Can it do this for us? Do we even need to add our route manually? Probably.
Probably. I can't imagine there's a fine line between do everything for you, which has to which slowly steps into that highly opinionated way. I mean, some things have to be opinionated. Um,
Oh yeah. Okay, we need to add route.
yeah, so
Says.
I add route. Again, I don't know what I'm doing, so you can correct me, and I'm just gonna go here, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna go with, ticket list, because I think that's what I just called it, right? Ticket list.view. Yeah, ticket list.view. And then I've got this guy. So template, container, rows. We're gonna call this pending requests. Button large loses. I don't want any of that stuff. I don't think I want any of this stuff, right? You can get into this ticket list, yeah? Inside of here.
Hold on, let me follow along. How do I? There's a follow button. Focus participants.
I mean, if you want me to follow you.
No, 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 don't follow me. Nobody needs that. uh,
Here, let me show you. Oh, you're now following me. Excellent. Okay. The things that Coalesce does on the front end generates those 4 files, provides a set of components prefixed with C hyphen that makes it easy to work with things it generates. Ahaha. So my default setting based upon the thingy that I just saw is I would like to do C hyphen, and I want to I guess I'm looking to see because it says here deloader makes it easy to work with things that it generated. Yeah, so this is where it ended up loading the user in this case, right? But I don't want a application users view model, right? At the end of the day, I want to do a ticket view model. And in fact, I would like a list of tickets. But if I do this,
Do we even want the model, or do we want to grab the client from API clients?
it's a good question. How do I get a collection? So let's take a brief gander, I guess, at the admin one that had a list of them. Generally, you don't work directly with the API clients. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought.
Oh,
So I would like to grab a list, and I'm seeing this as a way of getting a list. Is generated against list view model. See, that's their list view model. So rather than ticket view model, ticket list view model. Look at that. Boom. Uh, oh, look at that. And it even, are you doing this? Are you helping me?
I haven't done anything.
Oh,
Maybe it's Cyber Loris.
no,
He's joined the
I
chat.
can't tell whether it's you typing or whether it's other things. Okay, so I've got my tickets view model. Now I want to do something like tickets load. Yeah. Uh, uh yeah. So I don't.
Oh, interesting.
So I just want to do that. I don't think I care about this. Oh, and actually, I don't want the load here. I want the load down here. So I want this on created. And it's apparently asynchronous. Huzzah. So we do that, we do that, and we do that. Right? I assume the load on the individual one is load by ID. This gets me this. Now I have tickets. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is I would like to find where I drop this guy to do a collection of thingies. So this is the loader status, which will come back to, so this is going to be something like tickets there. I don't, trying to think of what I care about. So let's see. No progress, initial
Do
progress,
we want?
secondary progress, load content.
Oh, see
I'm
loader
just looking at
status.
what we're setting here. No error. 6 more. I want to see the 6 more, darn it. Give them to me. Can I not? I want to see the dot 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 part. Suck. Ah, there we go. C loader is status is a bit of a mess for beginners, honestly. I'm glad I'm being appropriately flagged as a beginner. I think that's an accurate assessment.
Do we
Novice might
wait?
be an acceptable description too.
Can we just delete?
Yeah, that probably works.
Because we're not saving anything yet, anyways, right?
Yeah,
So
this is just the list.
this looks like it's just adding some CSS classes
Yeah,
when
and this
per
is editing
ticket's not
user. This
loaded.
is editing user and doing all of that stuff. So we may not want any of this. Actually, I wonder if we actually care about any of this. What if we
I think
do
what we really
this?
want.
Right?
Oh,
Sorry,
what did
I
you
was gonna whack the whole thing, but
kill it?
because I think what I actually want to do is I really just want to display a collection of thingies, and this doesn't look like.
Oh, but what if would we still want to wrap our collection of thingies in this C loader status so it's displaying some sort of loading status while it's loading?
Yeah, we can ignore it for now. Is what
Okay.
Andrew says. So yeah, we burn that thing to the ground. Um, let me look real quick because I cheated. I cheated the other day. And by the other day, I mean a couple hours ago. And I wanted to look at what the underlying stuff was because darn it, that's what I do. Can't help myself. I had to go clone some things. I was going to look and see what the Coalesce view thing was, but it may be that may be a red herring of where to look.
When you say the close view thing, like this view to the components that it offers.
Yeah, and actually maybe going here. Um, let's just go here. Model components. Let's not do security. Let's do view models, maybe. View models, loading and parameters. List view models. Hey, this looks like what I want. Okay. Load. Great. We did that. That gives us a count. Next page, previous page. Auto load. Oh, that sounds cool. I like the idea of auto load. What I don't know then is where. Okay, so I think if I'm following this correctly, I can do that. So I can get away with this. But that's gonna require a view instance and options, auto load options. Let's just keep it simple for the moment. You're doing great.
Can we get a hour of weird programming?
I mean, that's the whole point of this, is so that you can go through and type that.
Tickets. Are you able to run it using VS Code so I can also access it locally?
I believe so. So I think if we do a, I think I have to just run it from inside of.
Yeah,
From
I think
here,
so. Yeah.
rather than from my other one. But I think if I do a .NET run, I think you get to see this now.
Yeah, I want to say it does some automatic like tunneling type deal.
Failed to bind address. Oh, my other one is probably still run. Yeah, my other one's still running. Hang on, let me kill my other one. Okay. I don't know if that set up the appropriate tunneling for you, but I have it now. So are you able to get to this?
Which port are you using? 5002?
Well, the shared port is 5001. So I think if you open up, because you're in VS Code, yeah?
Yeah.
Underneath the live share thing on the left, you open it up. I think you can literally just click copy server URL.
There we go.
And then pop it on your screen. I mean, it did something.
Oh. Failing due to network errors.
Sounded really
This
cool.
is interesting. Little. Consider the following. This might be a Firefox specific issue. Good old Firefox. All right.
Oh, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We're about to get some. Okay, Andrew, incoming. How would you like some expert help?
We got him. This was all an elaborate ploy to get him into the stream. Feigned ignorance.
Hello.
Or in my case, real.
Hold on, Andrew. No one can hear you yet. I gotta like actually turn you on and stuff. Let's see. Okay, go ahead. Now you can talk, Andrew.
Hello.
There we go. I've got you. You should hear your voice on the stream if you still have it up. Okay.
Already muted it.
You muted me? I'm both. I'm both flattered and insulted. Do you have access to the chat?
The stream chat or the Teams chat?
Teams chat. Specifically the place where I pasted the here. I can just
no, don't see it.
Okay.
By the way, if you're wanting to share the server, so it's actually it runs over two different ports. So it's running on 5001 and 5002. Both of them.
Do I have to add in another one?
And Joseph's also going to get angry SSL errors as well.
Oh, your audio's doubled up, Andrew. Hang on, let me figure out why. Can you talk again, Andrew?
Yep. Hello.
Okay, now I got you. Okay, thank you. I'm not showing your video, Andrew, because you don't have video.
Yeah, that's all right. I think your screen will get a little crowded.
I mean, I can always make you smaller.
You can pull me off. I'm providing a little value.
You're here for the looks. Okay, so question then. So if I expose, because you said 5001 and 5002 are the ports that need to be opened for the shared server.
Yeah, there's also a tweak that you can make to have everything go over one.
Oh.
So the way it works by default, there's a plugin that Coalesce provides into Vite, which is the thing that's building all of the front end stuff.
Okay.
And it's doing some magic to transform a bunch of the URLs to bypass the ASP.NET Core server, because when you proxy everything through that, when the ASP.NET Core server is running in debug, it's a lot slower.
Okay.
So if you open up your vite.config.ts in the root of your web project, it's vite.config.
Let's see, vite config.ts, this guy.
There, yep. And if you scroll down, you'll see create ASP.NET Core HMR plugin. If you pass to that on line 34.
34, thank you.
If you pass to that an object and give it a prop asset bypass false.
And like that. That maybe?
Yeah, that works. Yep. And then you'll want to
kill and restart.
Actually, it might not need to restart. It might just restart itself.
Okay. Oh, and I'm being complained that my audio is low compared to everyone else's. Well, we can fix that. I can just turn everyone else down. Thank you, Reese. We can dial that up because I've got buttons for that. Okay. Some of it is I am trying to keep my AC unit out of the background. Yes, I'm still running an AC unit. Okay, so Joseph, that should be up then for you to hit the server, I think.
It's still showing that file's still showing unsaved. I thought you saved it.
I thought I saved it too.
Didn't.
Well, now it's throwing an exception.
Imploded. Yeah, but just restart the whole ASP.NET Core process there.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm
in.
You're in? That's both amazing and terrifying all at the same time. Okay. So we're loaded. I can hit it. Refresh. Everyone's happy. Okay. So there's that. Okay, so first thing, I assume that in my web project, I've got my app level thing that must control those sidebar things, is my working theory.
Yep. So in your SRC, that's going to be an app.view.
App.view, because
app.view is your root component.
So, because even though I put in the router, I didn't do this much. So I got to do this, and this is going to be, it lines up with what I put in my router.ts, right? So request. Yep. I assume you have to spell correctly.
No, it fuzzy matches everything, so it leads to unpredictable behavior sometimes. But
excellent, and I'll deal with finding a pretty icon here in a moment. But and then, oh, okay. So now it is hitting there, and it's doing a thing, and it's making a thing happen. Okay, this hot reload thing is really cool. This works so much better than WPF. Hot reload is a hot mess. It's actually terrifying that I'm seeing Joseph edit things and stuff happen. Okay, so I don't stop. Like, by all means, carry on. Okay, so next question. If we just want to grab the list of tickets that are in our thing and display them in a list, what is the simple way of doing it? I assume we start with tickets list view model after your comment earlier.
yeah, so you'll want to start with the list view model. In terms of like what markup you might want to use to show that. And by the way, this uncreated, so this is totally fine to do it here with that with an immediately invoked function expression or an IFI. Mm-hmm. If you needed to do stuff on created after awaiting something, then that's kind of the way you want to do it with the composition API, because this code runs once per instance of this component. Okay. And you don't want to await in here. You can, and there's ways to set that up in Vue, but you have to use a thing called suspense, and you have to set up stuff in your root component, and it works really weirdly with router, and it's experimental, and it's kind of weird. So you don't want top level await here.
Okay.
So if you need to do something after your load, do it like this, and then do something else. The other way that you could do it would be to just chain it with a dot. Then that's the same thing as like a continue with in
C#.
.NET.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't need to do anything, then you can just not await it. It's unlike tasks in C#. It's not really a crime to not await promises. This will still store its status. You'll get a Boolean there that's going to hold whether it worked or not. You're going to get a message here. If there's an error, then the error message is going to be stored in there.
Got it.
So it's a function, but it also has properties on it that store the state of the last request made to it.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with this.
Okay. And then
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, and then is this idea here with this table and tickets, is this the way, because I thought Coalesce had something magical very similar to what your admin pages did, where, because I can go in here, right, and I get this. Oh.
Yep.
Invalid object name tickets.
Yeah, so that's because you haven't added a migration yet for your new
entity. Dang it.
So that's an error coming straight out of SQL Server.
Got it. Right. So that's okay. So we may have actually been closer. It's just that, okay, I'm going to put this thing over in this guy's going to go live in the data project because...
Andrew, what can you do with those request IDs in that error? You said that's straight from the database? Is that...
So that request ID in the error is the correlation ID coming from ASP.NET Core. So what that's going to do for you, if this was, for example, a production application and somebody sent you a screenshot saying, hey, thing doesn't work, then you can take that and painstakingly type it out because they sent you a screenshot of it. And then once you do that, you can use it to search in application insights or whatever kind of logging infrastructure you have for your application. And that's assuming you set up your logging correctly. If you're using app insights, then it's just going to work. Then you can use that to correlate your logging with the error that the user got.
Gotcha. If you use PowerToys, you can just extract the text from the screenshot that they send you.
I'm going to take a picture of it on my phone and use Google Lens and then send it to myself in a Teams private message and then pull it up.
Lovely.
Okay, so now if I go here, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Okay. Okay, so now we got that. I think I can probably muddle my way through the creation of an item since I've got a sample of it. Now for some more interesting questions for you. If we wanted to go through and, I guess what's like this is completed. If I want, wait, what? Oh, are you editing the? Are you editing the file? Okay, I'm like, how the heck did somebody do that? Okay, forgot. When somebody has access to the source code and live update, okay, I get it now. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. If I want to change this, because in an ideal situation is completed, I want this to be this is a table. How do I end up getting this to be like a button I can click that says, mark done? Is there?
Yeah, so this is using the out of the box. Just you're getting ahead of things.
Oh,
is that a prop on there? I can't remember. I don't. I almost never use ctable directly. So ctable is one of the components that the admin table is built upon.
Mm-hmm.
Has a few things in it for kind of customizing. You can add extra columns into the table. But generally you can't actually really customize it that much. So when you're doing something like this and you're kind of running a custom page, I wouldn't generally use ctable. What I would do is just write a regular old table. So, that might be, literally
okay.
table, HTML table, or, since we're using Viewtify, we can use vtable.
Yeah.
Auto completed the wrong thing. And then that's just going to give us a little bit of Viewtify styling on that. And it's going to do some other things like mobile. It's going to do like a responsive view on mobile screens.
Got it. Okay.
And nice styling and borders and rows and stuff. But from then it's largely just an exercise. Everything in this is just regular HTML table semantics. So, you're going to have a T head.
Where I go through and lay out the
T H. Yeah. You spell it correctly.
Somebody smart told me earlier that this was all fuzzy matched and that you didn't have to spell perfectly. As long as you were close, it would figure it out. That's what I heard earlier.
And then you're going to have your rows in here. And then for your rows, you're just going to have a simple before item in tickets dot items. Oh, what? The live share is doing very strange things with the autocomplete that I'm not used to because it's not activating all my plugins.
It's okay, I can tell. I think that's what you intended.
Yes.
Is it complaining for the key?
Yeah, and so you can give it a key that's going to tell Vue, hey, when these things reload or when they change or reorder, this is how to identify things uniquely so you can reuse the same element as they reorder. So you can say, you can use the primary key of the thing. Oh, man, these quotes.
I'm trying to help you.
Oh, gotcha.
But I'll stop helping. I'm probably hindering.
Yeah, and an unfortunate thing about some of the typings are a little specific in that it allows undefined, but it doesn't allow null. And it's like I don't know why they did that. Just put a not null assertion on it. Null won't hurt it one bit. You can also use stable ID, which is a property on the view models, and that's just a unique incrementing integer that is a unique number assigned to each instance of the view model.
Why would you want to use that over the actual ID, like from the database?
So for one thing, it will be there whether or not the thing has a primary key yet or not. So say you had an editable table and you can add a new record into the table, that's not going to have a primary key yet. But it'll always have a unique stable ID. And Vue, when it loads data back from when Coalesce loads data from the server, it's intelligent about that, and it reuses the same instances that you already had, even if they don't necessarily occur in the same order. So that helps with, performance and stuff, and not having things be re-rendered when they didn't need to be re-rendered.
Got it. Okay. So that makes a lot of sense then. So that gets me into here. And this is where I end up doing something really weird, right? Because this ends up then being item dot, and then this should have my, because yes,
down below all the dollar signs.
So this is okay. So now I can grab my, what do I call it? Requester name probably leads first, right? And then rinse, repeat, and
then it'll be so vbind like that isn't gonna do anything. So if you want to bind the text, it'll be vtext.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So vbind always is paired with well, I shouldn't say always. Vbind without anything extra on it. So if you do like vbind like that, it's going to spread out the properties of that object and put them as attributes on that TD element. So it's like going to put an attribute called length. That's the length of the string.
That is not what
because it doesn't know any better. Not what you want. If you wanted to bind some specific thing, like I don't know, the style element or the style attribute to this name, which also doesn't like null. Then you could do like that, or more commonly in Vue, the shorthand is just like that. So just a colon by itself is shorthand for vbind.
So I can get away with that.
But not shorthand. Not shorthand for text.
Got it. But
vtext is its own thing, and yep, and more. Well, I don't know. I suppose it's a matter of personal preference. You can also do interpolation like that, and those are going to have the same effect. There's cases where vtext is a little bit useful if you have a white space sensitive element like a pre, where you don't want leading and trailing white space around your interpolation. Then
got it. Okay. Cool. So then if I go here, what you're saying is when I hit this, no. Oh wait, no, that is working.
File's unsaved.
Well, and it is working because we don't have.
Oh, the old table's still there.
The old table's still there. If I put a foo in the middle, because we didn't actually do anything with our headers, there's nothing there to see.
Yep.
Right. So that kind of ends up making a little bit of sense then. Okay. So that also explains the setup there. Let's, if you don't mind, I assume then for my original request, this here is I then go with a V button, right? Right. If I want to do a thingy in here,
VBTN.
Yeah. See, this is because I think then the next thing is making sure that we can persist data back with Coalesce, right? Because I can muddle my way through actually saving this. So then inside of here, what I want to do is I want to grab the item and I want to make the call back, because your comment earlier was we typically don't work with the API clients directly. So the types of items in here, these are also ticket view models, right?
Correct.
So, and ticket view models have the ability to save themselves. So in theory, I can just grab item, set completed date to, UTC now, and then call save on it. Is that roughly the flow of what I would do?
Yeah. So there's a few ways you can do it. To help you out here, Joseph, so you want to do @click. So @ is another one of those shorthand ones, where @ is short for V on.
Ah, that's what it was.
I was getting so that's short for that. And so in here we're going to write whatever code we want to do on click. Now, there's a couple ways that we could do this. One way, and I'm going to just kind of put the code in line here so you can, this doesn't just have to be an, oh, my cursor isn't where I thought it was. There we go. So you can put as many statements in here as you want, although if you put a whole bunch, your code reviewer is probably not going to like you and tell you to pull it out into a method.
I don't have any code
but
reviewers. It'll be fine.
We could say item dot completed equals new date, and then item dot save. And that's a pretty simple way to do it. We could also play with turning on autosave on this, but turning on autosave on the items in the list is a little bit weird because you have to watch for new items in the list and turn it on for those as well.
Right. Which at some point I think
maybe a little bit more than we want to do right now.
Yeah, at some point I think before I turn this on and tell people to start using it, that like that'll be kind of Kevin's secret end goal. Because at the end of the day, rather than me managing the requests that come in by trying to use Teams, which crashes and loses my list, it'd be really nice to have something that didn't crash and could maintain a list of requests for me. And there are billions of apps out there, and so naturally I decided to build a billion plus one.
So if we go and look at the local host right now, we're getting some odd behavior. There's like 2 rows, and when I click the button on one of the rows, it updates the first row.
Yeah, well, so we've got 2 tables though.
There's
Joe.
2 tables in here still.
So here,
the old one's still here.
Who put that C table there?
Yeah, let's make our lives a little less confusing and do this, right? Where then we don't have to look at it, and now we should only see ours.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right, and so we can see save by true, and then the nice part is I can come over here because we have these lovely admin tables, right? And I can edit it, and I can say, whoop, hey, off.
No, that's a getter only.
Oh, that's right.
That's a read only switch.
So you're saying I can't click and change a read only field? Can I do this to null it out?
And unfortunately, Beautify's default styling for read only, a lot of things is not very clear. I kind of have a set of styles that I keep in my back pocket that I carry around from project to project to make its disabled styles a little more disabled.
Yeah, because it does look clickable and like
it certainly does. It's very interactive with hover effects and click effects but it's actually disabled.
Yeah, that's not very disabled-y. Okay, and then the clear on here, I just had to go clear on the picker. You can't just clear that out, but whatever.
I think you can. You can just clear out the text in there and then hit enter.
If I hit there, complete true, great. Yep. And then if I refresh this, it should show me the new thing, right? And I thought if I just did backspace and then like clicked off, but it keeps coming back.
You found a bug.
No, I found an undocumented feature. But if I come over here and hit clear, it works just fine.
It's actually been a while since I updated the template. I think this may have since been fixed. The template's actually in a little bit older version. I did some stuff with the date pickers recently.
Got it.
So another way to do this modification here with this button would be to instead of setting that field and then calling save, we can actually just do that in one thing here and pass that in as an object. And so what that's going to do is just sends. So Coalesce already does surgical saves, so it's only going to save the properties that you change. Similar how to Entity Framework. Entity Framework's only going to issue an update statement for the things that it saw changed. Coalesce also has field level dirty tracking on the client. And so it'll only pass the things to the DTO that actually changed. And so this overload of save that takes an object essentially is what we're saying is we're just overriding the fields that we're saving and saying, hey, save this, but it's not actually set on our item yet. But it'll come back momentarily from the response from the server.
And when we do item.save, so it basically sends the equivalent of like a patch of set completed date time to this. Coalesce makes the call, goes to the API controller, goes to the database, save changes, all the things. New entity comes back, converted to DTO, deserialized, sends back to our client, and then the generated ticket view model takes that response and updates itself, mutates itself with appropriate property changes that views watching, then updates the UI and everything works.
Yep.
That is slick.
You got it.
Is it sending a patch request when you do that?
No,
no, it's just the save endpoint, which is just a post. But it's only putting the fields in there that it needs to change. And then if you look at that ticket DTO gen, if you look at the source of that, we'll see that each of those setters on that generated DTO.
Why does navigate no work?
You didn't want F12 to work. You didn't want to go to definition, huh?
I tried.
Yeah. So on each of those, you'll see the setters have they call a method called changed, which lets us flag the ones that were actually set, because the ASP core model binder is only calling the setters of the things that it actually received as input.
Interesting. That's an interesting, dirty little trick. I like it. My WPF brain is immediately twitching and going, that's not how you implement iNotify property change. But this is not, it's not a view model. I'm going to turn my WPF brain off. Just momentarily. I saw you updated this to C#12. Is that right?
So Coalesce, yes, Coalesce supports .NET 8 and C#12, and I don't really know if we're using any language features from C#12. Although I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, I want this to look
name.
like this. I want to delete that. I really can I go change it? Pull request. I'll submit a pull request.
Wait, so I can get the name of the caller? It's not the thing you can get the name of the argument, but it's the name of the caller.
Yeah, and that's not even a C#12 feature. That's back a little ways. Caller member name attribute is the magical invocation. See, us WPF guys, we know things.
Cool.
Yes, an attribute that I think was literally built for WPF, because if it wasn't, it just fit way too nicely into that whole. So, yeah, you decorate this with an optional string parameter. String parameter gets caller member name attribute on it, and then this just goes away.
Yep. I like it.
And then, you've saved yourself one minor improvement. Cool. Okay, so that makes sense. That gets us into there. Is there a way, if I want to do so hypothetically, we're going to have multiple of these tickets, right? And some are going to be completed and some are not going to be. If I wanted to reorder these sets, is that where you were talking about doing something down here? Like if I wanted to, basically, I'd like to kind of, group is the wrong word. I want to sort by is completed.
Yeah, so there's a couple ways you could sort. You could sort on the server or you could sort on the client. The nice thing about sorting on the server is if you have 800,000 items, then they're going to be sorted before your pagination is implied. Whereas if you sort on the client, then it's, you'll get a page of like 1 completed and 9 incomplete, and then you go to the next page and you get another 1 completed and 9 incomplete or whatever.
Right.
So if you wanted to sort on the client, I'd recommend, rather than mutating the items coming in, I'd recommend making a new computed property to hold that. So that would look something like const sorted items equals computed. And then it's going to just return tickets dot items. We're going to spread this array into a copy of itself, and then sort AB.
A dot completed.
What is the? Yeah, A
is completed.
I guess it's just A dot is completed for a Boolean sort. Just pick the left-hand side. Is that right?
I mean, you can tell me. So the C Sharpie way is A dot is completed dot compare to B is completed. What's the TypeScript equivalent?
Well, it's the JavaScript equivalent, and there isn't one. It's just Yeah, I think just picking one side or the other, depending on which way you want it to go for a Boolean. No, because you have to choose B. Why don't I? Tell you what. If you sort by the date.
Oh, that works.
And then you just default if it's incomplete.
0.
Oh, but you want it the other way around, so it would be an incomplete item and have an infinite date. Wait, where's infinity? I have IntelliSense. I guess you can't see my IntelliSense.
I don't get to see your IntelliSense. Object is possibly
Oh, it's just a global called infinity. So that tells you how often I use infinity in JavaScript, which is I don't. And we parenthesize those. Yep, thank you.
Let's see. Let's see. So I actually want to do it there, right? And then I want the bang there.
I actually don't need bangs because it always fall back to something.
What is it squawking about? It is the expression is not callable.
Oh, semicolon. Because we have a parenthesis down here, it's acting as if this is the argument list being passed into calling this expression. It's one of those cases where semicolons matter in JavaScript. So now we have
client-side sorting.
Yeah, so this will do client-side sorting, and so we can take that sorted items, and we can just throw that up in our v4, which I've just done.
Oh, I should go and...
It works.
I mean...
Yeah, they're in order.
Hang on. Kevin doesn't know TypeScript. Yeah, and then we're going to go create requester Joe.
Doesn't know C# or TypeScript.
Already knows everything. Except spelling, clearly. Okay, so now we at least have something to look at, right? And I hit this, and then I get that. And then if I save this one, right, and it goes to the top.
Does Coalesce have support for like WebSockets where when Kevin just like changed the added the new things on his other tab, it would automatically update on the other tab?
No. One of those things that Grant and I have periodically discussed and be like, man, wouldn't that be like really cool? But it's also really hard.
Okay, so that makes sense. And then if we wanted to do server-side sorting, what's the appropriate way to go about that?
Yeah, so if we go into our ticket class in C#, we're going to make some new default behaviors on this. So there's a little bit of ceremony around this, and you can find this in the docs under behavior, or sorry, under data sources. But essentially what we're going to do, so it's on the left-hand side, about halfway down under model components on the docs.
I'm going to just do this. Model components, data sources, because
Yeah, data sources.
Got it.
Yep, well, I just did it. So this is, so every type will automatically have the standard data source, which is just kind of the default entity framework behavior. It respects a whole bunch of attributes, does kind of sorting and searching and filtering and all that kind of stuff. You can also define your own custom behaviors. You can either override the default standard behaviors you get out of the box, in order to kind of completely override that functionality. That's especially important if you're implementing some kind of security logic in your data source, like restricting who can see what. Then you don't want the out of the box ones exposed in addition to your custom data source.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can define, multiple custom data sources if you have different ways that you want to load things for different reasons or different pages. And the data sources can have parameters too, as you can see there on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
They can have custom parameters. If you have extra special things you want to pass in when you're doing a list or you're doing a GET request.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
So to do that, we're going to say public class, and typically we do these as a nested class. You can also do it not as a nested class. You just have to add an additional attribute on there to help Coalesce discover it. But if you do it as a nested class, then it'll just pick it up automatically. I always call mine default source, and in fact, if you call it default source or anything with default in the name, then Coalesce is going to yell at you if you don't put default data source attribute on it in order to make sure that you're overriding the built-in out of the box one, because that's probably what you meant to do if you called it default. We're going to inherit from the standard data source for ticket, and it comes from app DB context. It's very fun writing a class without brace autocomplete. You're going to give it the default constructor, which takes the CRUD context. Normally you'd have Visual Studio do this for you.
CRUD context.
So that's the boilerplate. The CRUD context is just a bucket of properties, a bucket of services. So that has your DB context on it. It has your current user on it. That's mainly what's there.
Got it. Okay.
And then from there, if we want to do sorting, then we're going to want to override the method
Get query.
Apply default sorting. I'm a bit lost without my IntelliSense. I don't remember what it's called.
I mean, if it helps, I can also pop Visual Studio and I might even get better IntelliSense than you on this. Let's see.
It's called apply something sorting. I think I know this better, but I don't.
Don't worry. When in doubt, real IDs to the rescue. That was not a jab at Visual Studio. It was kind of a jab. Oh, we have to hit save, otherwise it doesn't show up in Visual Studio. So if we go here, and then there we go. So apply list sorting.
Yeah. So you can
Yes.
yes.
Apply list defaults.
Is also so apply list default sorting will override the sorting done if the client doesn't specify anything. Because one thing that I neglected to tell you, and very much intentionally and wasn't just forgetting about, is that you can also just specify the sort field from the client if you have simple sorting, like, hey, just sort by this property.
Ah, okay.
Which in this case probably won't be sufficient, because I believe the sort order would be setting a null date would be treated as old, not new. Whereas what we want here is a null date is treated as newer than anything that has a non-null date.
Correct, because I want the to-do items, the pending stuff to be at the top.
Yep. So from there, you just chain off of, in this case, you probably don't want to call the base method, because you'll just be applying a new order by on top of that. So you'll just start with query, and you'll just return query.order by thing, and then then by other thing.
Something like that. Not quite.
Yeah, and you want to put the null. So order by descending completed date time equals null, and then by completed date time, I think. Right? Order by descending true comes first. So that would put incomplete first, and then, yep, that's right.
That,
and then we can get rid of the other one.
Well, I'm going to do this so that I can remember. Now this, I don't think are happy. This thing's not hip to that, is it? No.
It can no, it can't.
I was gonna say
hot reload new classes.
I mean, I can dream. In WPF, I click the little fire icon in Visual Studio, and about 20% of the time it works.
So 80% of the time, Visual Studio crashes.
EF core question here, but if you were to have combined those two sorting expressions, would it throw an error because it wouldn't be able to convert it to SQL? Like if you did the equals null and I forget what
well, that would produce different output, so it would be able to translate that.
Okay.
But you need the then by to specify the second order thing to sort by for cases when the first thing is the same between two properties.
Sure.
Then it goes to the next clause.
It's been a while since I did anything C# or core EF related, but I remember occasionally running into like, oh, this thing can't be translated to SQL.
Okay, something's up.
We're still using our client sorting on the front end.
Oh, so you're saying the fact that I just reverted this is probably not the fix. Right, okay, so when in doubt, just assume the problem's JavaScript. Got it, okay. So up here, I want to go back to the regular tickets.
Yep, so change that back to tickets.items. Tickets.dollar items.
Okay, and then that does the needful, the thing auto does.
Is the $sign like the observable kind of pattern, or is
no? There's nothing. So the only thing special about the $sign prefix and a lot of things in Coalesce is to disambiguate it from any of your own properties.
Gotcha.
For example, you might have an entity that has a navigation property on it called items, and that would break. Well, that's the list view model, so it wouldn't break there. But you might have an entity with a, I don't know, can't think of it.
A saved member.
Yeah, something on it called that it needs to disambiguate that from the framework. So rather than make a big list of things that, reserved things that we can put on view models and Coalesce that, forever future face thinking, hey, these are all the things that we ever might want to put here. You can't name your own things these. We just put the $sign there and
so all I have to do is get the C# spec to change so that I can name my member starting with $signs. That's the annoy Andrew language team.
Can't you do that?
Lead a member with a $sign?
I thought
you put like the weird Unicode sequences and then
the first
name like that's horrible.
The spec is fairly limiting on specifically the first character in an identifier. You can get away with some of the latter characters, but the first character is really restrictive. I'm trying to remember the set, but it's a very isolated set. I think specifically because they didn't want people doing crap like that.
Yeah.
It's fair enough. It's like they were anticipating somebody like me coming along and doing stupid stuff. Since we're in Visual Studio, we're just gonna do that maneuver real quick. It didn't do the nullable. Just for my own edification, the reason you had set up the nullable attributes on here is just dealing with the way EF treats this stuff when you have nullability.
Yeah, it's just kind of dealing with the way that it works with nullable with kind of everything in EF.
Yeah, because they
It's
doubled
just
up the
kind of
purpose of nullable
yeah,
and
and even things like navigation properties, you'll get nullable warnings when you use a navigation property in like an EF core include expression, or really any queryable expression, which of course is translating to SQL and is therefore using database null semantics and not .NET CLR null semantics, which are very different in the database, and the navigation properties aren't even real. They're, the materialization of a join. It, um, so, I don't always do nullable disable on all my entities on my projects, but man, does it make things easier?
Okay. I like this. I like this a lot. And then I think then the only other thing that I might end up doing is I might slap a property on here for like, you know, because this is a bias priority queue, I almost need a bias property, therefore I can move things up and down based upon how I am feeling that day. So, if Kevin has had a lot of Mountain Dew, he's willing to talk to Joe. If not, he might need to get Mountain Dew before talking to Joe. Therefore, things are going to go back and forth between those two. So I may go and slap something like that on there. Okay, I like this. Am I misremembering? Didn't older Coalesce used to generate out a whole set of like CRUD views for you at one point? Was that a thing?
Yeah, so the knockout version would generate out individual view pages for that. You would generate out like a whole thing, like a full table and all that, in a unique copy of a page like that for each entity.
Right.
So the view stack, because you can't feasibly do this because all this gets bundled and compiled into a set of JavaScript, and if you did that, you would be serving like 20 megabytes of JavaScript as a client, which some people get upset about. I don't know why. So instead of doing that, the admin tables and everything in the view stack are all driven off of the metadata and the other layers too. And so they're dynamic components that are just iterating over the properties of a model, and just driven off of the generated metadata.
Got it.
Which is a lot more lightweight than generating out full entire pages that are all individually compiled and
right, because
published into the resulting JavaScript bundle.
I was contemplating stealing one, but I think then what I think I understand is I need to do a like a create ticket view, right? Because the two primary functions that I want in here are people to create, Kevin to view list. And I kind of think that that's where it's going to end up landing. This may be a bit of a view question, but how does one, so let me show you. I'm going to show you something completely unrelated. If I look at, hang on one second, let me just pull it over here because I don't know what it's going to pull up. So I'm gonna just pull it up here so that it, there. So we built this other project in Blazor, right? And when you do this create room button, it's broken and doesn't work. So once we fix
we do use it in our sprint planning.
Well, clearly you don't lose the create room button because apparently it's broken, and that's going to become a Hacktoberfest issue here in a moment. But I'm able to put in kind of this unique identifier to be able to populate it.
Yep.
I'm surprised that you guys use it. Is that an Allen thing?
No, this is not an Allen project at all. I suggested it to the team. We were like, hey, we need something to do pointing. I was like, hey, what about this thing that Kevin made?
That is terrifying. That is terrifying. I am slowly gaining users. I'm gonna have to actually like bump it off of Ye cheap tier of Azure at some point, because that's what it's running on. How do you end up doing those kind of query parameters and getting them all the way down? Because in my mind, what would be really great is on these tickets, I kind of want the concept of tenancy a little bit, but it can be very loose tenancy, the same way rooms in Pointer are very loose identifier strings.
Mm-hmm.
How do you flow that all the way from, because I assume at the router level, right, I can kind of see how they have this type thing on the URL. How do I end up floating that in? Oh, you're already jumping there.
Yeah, so you could put that, so if it has a colon in it in the path spec for the route, that's going to be a parameter. That's just for things that are part of your path, and there's all kinds of things, you can put like constraints, like if you put parentheses there and you do like that, then you can put regex there to make it match a regex. I think that's the syntax. I can't actually remember. It might be slightly different than that. And then the way you do that is you set props here on the route, and that will tell it what props to pass down to your component. And one way to do that is just to say props true. And what that will do is just pass every named path parameter here. So it'll pass a prop called tenant with a value of tenant down to your ticket list. You can also do a function, which then you can return, whatever you want in here. So you might have things you want to pull off the query string. So you can do, route.query.foo.
Got it.
You can access the other things in your path. Those are called params. So route.params.tenant. You could do that. So functionally, this is exactly the same as saying props true.
I like props true. That sounds really easy. Okay.
Yep, it's nice and concise, and if you don't need anything off the query string, then it's nice and easy. So in the component, what you're going to do is you're going to define your props here. And we're going to use a special magical view composition API, which is what we're using. So there's two different APIs in Vue. There's a composition API and there's the options API. We're using the composition API. It's kind of like the new cool one.
Yeah, I saw that on their docs page. They have the little toggle for the thingy mabobber. Okay.
So we're going to say, and this is a special TypeScript macro fancy thing that the Vue compiler will turn into valid code, but this doesn't. This function doesn't exist at runtime. It's called define props, and it's generic, and it takes an object, and that object is just it's the type of your prop. So tenant is a string, and that's it.
Oh,
And you want to assign it to something so you can actually use it.
So now I've got props.tenant that I can then leverage elsewhere.
Yep, and now you can use that for whatever. And you can use that directly. You don't have to prefix that with props if you're only using it up in your template. It gets promoted to the top level, so you can either, you can have tenant there, or you could do props.tenant there as well.
Now, how do, or I should say, I'm assuming Coalesce doesn't have like multi-tenancy built in the box, right? So I'm going to need to
Correct.
I'm going to need to put something like tenant on my ticket, right?
Yeah.
That way I can filter it. And then when I query on this load, can I get away? Does load have something based upon what you showed me a minute ago, where I can do something like filter or similar and just tell it that I want? So in theory, if we imagine that that's there, tenant, and then I do props.tenant, right? And
Yep.
something like this then magically works if I go and add tenant to, and I spell it correctly with an A.
Yeah. So the way that'll work, if you want to do like, kind of this soft client side, not actually like a security thing tenancy that we're doing here, is tickets dot oops, sorry, I missed a step. Params dot filter. So this filter, so params is the set of all of the things that go into the load request. So that's going to hold things like your search and your order by and your page number and your page size. It also includes this filter, which is a really simple mechanism of kind of applying filters to a list. It'll just do it based on exact property values with some other special behaviors for things like dates. Dates have some fancy functionality. And this is in the documentation. So on the
It's somewhere in here.
In the standard parameters.
Yeah, well,
about halfway down the page.
Standard
so
parameter
up
there.
just a little bit.
Okay.
Right there. Oh, it's not documented in here. Where is it? I don't know. Just use the search for filter.
And I'm looking for a filter.
Go down. Go back to the end. It might be documented on that, on filter object. Oh, that's the knockout stack. Whoop, not that. Go to that one that's apply list filtering.
Apply list filtering.
Yeah. Oh, and it didn't. Thanks, Algolia's search. You didn't jump us there because we're already on the page. It didn't.
Oh, well, I can do that. I can
spot.
fix that. Ah.
Why can't I remember what it is? I guess I can just pull
apply
open the
list
docs.
filtering. Ah, so this set of so apply list filtering then exists, and then that object.
So that takes it. Yeah. So that iFilter parameters is the representation of C# of what was put into tickets dollar params. So filter exists within that iFilter params.
Got it. Okay.
And that's kind of where that happens. I thought I had better documentation about explaining the different ways in which different properties will be filtered. For example, string has a magical thing where if you put an asterisk at the end, it'll do a starts with rather than an exact match.
I mean,
it's right there.
I was gonna say down a couple.
You found it.
I mean, you're talking, and I'm like, it kind of sounds like the. I mean, you said the words exact match instead of will match exactly, but I mean, you were almost going bullet point for bullet point.
I found it. I just have to read for 5 more seconds.
Got it. Okay. I guess this actually lines up with kind of default expectations that I would have anyway. Dates with no time component will just... So it just kind of does the thing I would hope for without me having to do a lot of work. So when in doubt, I should just try the easy thing and see if it works, because Coalesce might just do the easy thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the hope.
Got it. Okay, so I go through and I put that in, and then apply list property filter, right? So then does that mean that, so this now gets my tenant into here, right? If I come into this, I end up applying that here, right? So
yeah, and you don't actually have to write that at all. So that's the base functionality that's already
so this
in
is just
the
going to
standard
magically
data source.
work as long as
so
I
you
go
don't have
and
to do
create
anything
this...
on the server.
Right. Well, I have to do one thing on the server.
The tenant has to be. You do have to have a prop called that.
Yeah, so I need to do that, right? And then I need to go back over here because somebody told me add tenant, right? So I got to do that much of it at least. And then I need to rerun the .NET Coalesce, right, inside the web project. Yep. Because anytime I change one of my models or anything that's going to, or how I phrase this, anytime I touch something that I expect to change either the DTOs or the controllers or basically any of that middleware pipeline, I rerun this command.
Yep.
Okay. And
most changes that are affecting the visible API surface of Coalesce you want to regenerate.
Right. And sometimes that's easier known than not, but
yeah.
Okay. When in doubt,
generally, if you're editing the body of a method, you probably don't need to regenerate.
Okay, so we do that, and then this magically just works, except for I just created a required property, and I think it's probably going to fail on startup, isn't it? Because I now have a bunch of items in my database that don't have the required property. Huh. It didn't hate me. I heard foo was cool today. We're just going to put them all in foo. Right? That way we can have something to play with. And then if I go here, this doesn't quite work because the route's wrong. But if I do foo slash, right, that gets me in here.
Yep.
And then this queried appropriately. And if I go here, I got to prove this to myself really quick. Requester name, Andrew, a request doesn't need any help, right? Bar. And then if I go and look here, just to prove that I'm not missing it, that doesn't show up. But if I come in here and do this, oh, it's so beautiful. That was remarkably easy. Mwah. So now all I really need is some sort of UI in the middle where I make people basically type in their tenant ID, per se, so that it works.
Yep.
I think
I'm fascinated that migration didn't fail.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little weird.
I wonder if the migration generated with a default value in the SQL. Oh, it did. Yeah, the migration has a default value of empty string.
Oh, that's cheating. That's cheating. I mean, I guess what else would I expect? There's not really a good alternative for them to do. Okay, fine. Fine, that can work. That is so slick. So slick. Okay, I think that kicks off most of this. Joe, what else do you need to know? So for those people watching, secretly there is a hackathon coming up where a bunch of people are going to try to build something with Coalesce. So this was somewhat of a learning experience for me because I want this app, and somewhat of a preparatory thing for that.
Let me pull up the project board for this hackathon idea and see if I have any questions.
Yeah, because I'd be kind of curious because this seems super simple. I feel like I could get going very. It's not quite as easy as Blazor because I have to do TypeScript and not C#, but it's really close.
I mean, I got to be honest. After working on a Blazor project for a bit, I really miss working on Vue and TypeScript. It's so much nicer. And the hot reload. I mean, the hot reload is just instant, and it always works.
Could you show us?
I've never gotten an error from Vite or VS Code or anything saying, "I'm sorry, you need to rebuild and restart your project for the hot reload to work." Occasionally, you have to refresh the page.
Oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah, go ahead, Joseph.
Can we add, if it's not too much time, so Kevin is the only one who can like delete and perhaps update requests to be completed. So like say I go in and add a request, I can see that I created it and maybe I can delete my own.
Oh, you're wanting to
I don't know,
see
that
how to
might get
bifurcate
tricky,
the permissions.
Yeah, so in order to do that, you'll really need an authentication mechanism in the app, which isn't currently there.
Is there an easy drop-in one, or does it require a fair bit of setting up?
I mean, the easiest one to drop in would be Windows authentication, but that's not going to work. For you, it's not going to work over like a tunnel of.
That's fine.
Because Kevin isn't running a globally accessible Active Directory server on his home computer, I don't think.
Not yet.
And so you can't authenticate to his computer.
I mean, I do have an AAD tenant, but
so you could drop in I'd say drop in, but I mean, it takes some doing. Put in like a Microsoft authentication or Google login with Google login, Microsoft, whatever you want to do there. You can add that in, and that's really agnostic to Coalesce. You'd just be following the documentation on ASP.NET Core for that.
Yeah, I guess then the question is, because I think what you're describing, Joe, is row level security, right? Of
yep.
we only want. Well, I guess there's a bit of a combination, right? So effectively, only admins can toggle or can only write the completed date column, right? But we want effectively anonymous users, because we don't care about anonymous ones per se being able to create records.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could just limit updating at all, so anyone can create, but beyond that, you can't update. Though perhaps you want to be able to update requests that you created or delete ones that you created. I guess that would be using like your tenant thing. So if you knew a tenant ID, you basically have free reign to do whatever you want with those requests, maybe.
Yeah, Andrew, if you don't mind, maybe I ask this question. Because we can kind of test this mildly, because you left a nice list in the docs where you called out the reason it's authing right now is because of this little bit of middleware you slapped in here where it just fakes an identity. In theory, if I comment this out, everything fails to access, right? Because
correct, because everything requires
everything
authentication.
Yeah. So how would we then? So we can kind of test this a little bit. How would we enable anonymous auth for certain things? Well, I guess home.
So you want to
works,
go,
but like
because home's not calling the API, but these won't work. Oh, and they actually are. They do work because it's actually signing you in with the cookie, and you still have the cookie.
Oh, stupid cookies! Hang on. Burn.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, so now I get appropriately failed auth. Okay, so how would we enable anonymous auth for certain things? Maybe we go that route rather than dropping in full auth. Because on this app we kind of want that as well.
Yeah, so you go to your entity, go to your ticket.
Go to my entity on my ticket. Yep.
So on the class, on the ticket class, so there's 4 attributes you can put here: create, read, update, delete.
If I do read, there's read only. Oh, that's not your right.
We do actually respect like a lot of the system component model ones. It's like read only. I don't actually. Do we look at that on the class? I think we do.
Well, it's not available.
It's not what we want. Oh, right. That is a property attribute.
Yeah. So we want this.
So we want the read coalesce attribute and give that. So you'll see on there, no auto include, which is irrelevant for classes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, it's not irrelevant for classes. Gosh, I just added that not that long ago. So permission level, you want allow all. It's going to let anonymous people in.
Got it.
That's it.
So now in theory, if I build and relaunch, right, I should be able to hit the admin. So should the admin
and you want to
page...
regen?
Oh, thank you.
Because those attributes will affect the attributes that get emitted onto the generated controllers.
Right. But should I expect the admin page to let me then in and show me the table, but it won't? But I fail if I click like the create or any of those buttons. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking my expectations are.
Yep. So the front end really doesn't have any knowledge of any kind of security that you put in. It's really just back end only. So the effect is going to be just that API calls will fail.
So if I do this,
yep,
401. There is a question here too. Is there any way to default to allow all? I assume by allow all.
Not on like a global level. No, you'd have to put that individually on every single thing that you want that on.
Because, and just to make sure that I'm tracking here, the reason for this is because on the generated API controllers, well, hold on, explain this to me. Why does allow anonymous get decorated on all of the methods? Because you
just opened up the read to anybody.
It's and these are all read operations. Hey, look at that. That's kind of cool. And then otherwise it's got authorize on here. Hey, I get it now. I get it. Cool. Okay. So, and then hypothetically, if we were to go down the path of saying we want to restrict so if we change this, I assume there's an equivalent write attribute or create
it's read, create, update, and delete.
So if I do create, now anyone can create, right? But if I want to lock down this completed date time so that only authorized users can update it, how do I do that? Right, because this allows anybody to see and create.
Yeah, so the class level stuff kind of, in this case, will trump the property one. So since the update isn't allowed, then only authenticated people are going to be able to write to that property. And the way that property security works is a little bit different than the class security. So there is the property level security only does the role restrictions. It doesn't do the anonymous versus authenticated checks.
Got it. So, okay. That I think makes some sense. So down here, I effectively, in order to do something like that, because is it roles or what's the attribute I put on here if I wanted to say?
So the property ones are read and edit.
Got it. So I would end up doing edit, and then I would restrict this down to roles of, admin. So only an authenticated user with the admin role is then able to edit this property.
Yep.
But does this still mean that anonymous can create the instance at the beginning and therefore set the initial value of this?
Nope. So that's so the edit of the completed date time will be restricted to admin under all circumstances, no matter what.
Perfect, because that's exactly what we want. Is on creation, I really only want the person filling out this level of information. And so
where are the roles defined? Like, are they
roles can be
model?
defined in a lot of different ways. So if you brought in ASP.NET Core Identity, and so you had a set of tables in your application for, all the standard ones, ASP.NET User, ASP.NET Role, ASP.NET User Role, all of those tokens, and you set up the identity infrastructure, then it's going to do that. So identity is going to come along with it, a whole bunch of infrastructure, and when you sign in, it's going to invoke a claims principal factory, and the default claims principal factory is going to pull the roles that you're assigned in the database out and assign those to your claims principal. If you use some other authentication mechanisms, for example, if you used Windows authentication, then you're actually you can use your Windows role names or your Windows group names there, although that's not always pleasant. You can add additional middleware that will tack on additional identities to the signed-in principal, which then you can populate that additional identity with additional roles. If you had kind of some auxiliary mechanism for pulling roles from, for example, an application like Myriad, which uses Windows authentication, also has its own set of roles that it stores in the database. And then we have a piece of middleware that's pulling those roles out of the database when a user makes a request and attaching those to the user.
Gotcha.
So there's a bajillion ways you can do it, and it's it's all decoupled from Coalesce. You're really at that point just configuring kind of ASP.NET Core infrastructure.
Yeah, which is both a blessing and a curse, because I think setting up identity in ASP.NET Core, like, it feels like one of those things that's architected so that it can do anything, and therefore it's hard to do everything.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of. It takes a lot to learn it, and just to be able to kind of set it up in a project it takes a lot.
Yeah. Hey Bruce, we are learning Coalesce, and Andrew has graciously volunteered his wisdom. Okay, Joe, what else? I think we've hit on everything I care about, because so let me ask, maybe I'll ask a question, a very different question, Andrew. Is there any desire to have like this template spin, like GitHub Actions and whatnot, for like full CI/CD deployment? Like, I realize this is just an ASP.NET Core app, so I could deploy it however I wanted. But part of me is now immediately looking at this going, container app. I could build this in a container and push this out as a container app, and my world becomes happy. But is there any desire to have something like that? Like, if I were to go and spin my simple project with a full GitHub action, would you want something like that in a template, or is that like a dear heavens, keep that away from my template?
So yeah, we have kind of played around with the idea of what would a more full-featured template look like with all kinds of bells and whistles in it? And I don't know what the current state of .NET templates are, and how I know they're capable of doing things conditionally. At least I think they are.
They are.
And how kind of how difficult and how cumbersome that is to do, and kind of what features we would want to be adding in there, especially when it comes around to some of this code is front end TypeScript code, and how well does it behave with that, and it's just a matter of how much work it takes to maintain it at the end of the day.
Yeah, like for example, I don't know if you're watching, but like one of the ones I have, because I noticed the solution file includes a test solution level folder, and I was like, ugh, because like mine, I very intentionally go through and so mine gens test by default and you opt out, but I'm like, it feels like something where I want to write some basic test projects and have you opt in, or like -- tests, and you can pick between XUnit MS tests or none or whatever, because it does have that level of conditional checks that you can do in it. It does get kind of ugly doing this, because you go from a nice file that you could load up in Visual Studio to a file that you really can't load up in Visual Studio, and so it's mildly obnoxious to do something like that. But
yeah, right now we can load the template in Visual Studio, and you can go clone the template repo and then just run it, and it works.
Right. Which is, versus once you start doing this stuff, you end up having it. Your test is, I .NET new my template, and then I run that rather than being inside of it. And so you end up kind of going back and forth, which is like mildly annoying. So I will say that. But okay.
One question I have, it's not really a Coalesce specific thing, but do people use Hangfire still?
Yep.
Did they ever?
Use Hangfire all the time.
Okay. I mean, I used it for a project, but I was never really sure if it was sort of like a band-aid way of doing things, or if it was like actually an okay thing to really use in production. Because it's basically just like a sidecar process.
Most of, I'd say the majority of applications I work on, we use it.
Yeah,
Cool.
It depends on what you're doing too. There is inside of ASP.NET Core, there is a concept of a hosted service, which some of what Hangfire was designed to fix, depending on what you're building, could be solved with a hosted service instead. But they aren't equivalent. Like some of the use cases overlap, and that I think is where they end.
Because Hangfire, if I recall, it's adding some tables to your database to kind of manage its tasks. It's using the database as a sort of a message broker in a way.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it records your jobs there and the parameters and the your in-queued jobs and your recurring jobs and kind of the state of all that.
Is there anything worth noting Coalesce wise with Hangfire specifically?
Nope, they're really completely independent. You throw the Hangfire dashboard in your project, but that's just a route that gets mapped to in your startup. There's really no interaction between the two whatsoever.
Gotcha.
That's really relevant. If you're writing custom methods on your models, or you're writing custom Coalesce services, you may want to inject the Hangfire background job client. That's kind of the interface for enqueuing jobs, but that's really no different than anything else. It's just dependency injection, which Coalesce supports on custom methods and services and such.
Cool. Yeah, as far as the hackathon stuff goes, looking at these issues, seems like we're in a good spot to
I'm
set up AAD, OpenID.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you know what? Why am I thinking about this? Hang on. What I heard is create new repo. Do I want to do it here, or do I want to do it? Actually, you know what? And this is, I'm sorry. Get cracking. It's not you, it's me. It's mildly convenient to do this here because I can set this up like this, and I can do this. I can do this. A simple app for managing help requests, and then it do not need to be private. Bippity boppity booyah. And then stand by while I do authy things. Apparently you have to log in for this to work. Okay. Should be up, I think. I think it's up. I figure if anybody wants to go see and powwow. Look at that. Look at that. Repo's up. I win.
Nice.
Cool. So that's up and pushed and off to the races, and now we can start doing other stuff. And I can pretend like I know Vue now. I'll add this to my resume.
Woo!
Add it to storming the castle.
Yeah. I feel like I need to get it up to that level at least. What is this blue dot for? Code spaces. How well does Coalesce work under code spaces? I assume it would work rather well. There's nothing special about it.
I don't know. Never tried it.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I've always found that I have an actual computer, so I never really needed code spaces.
I'm just wondering about. Because it's just a .NET local tool for the generation. It probably works okay.
I mean, it's just some basic command line stuff.
Huh.
I don't know what happens to, you may run into issues with Like when you run it, I don't know, does the browser run inside the code space, or does that proxy out the port like LiveShare does?
It's more akin to LiveShare because you actually get compute on the back end.
Yeah, so you'd have to, maybe disable the asset bypass thing again in the Vite config. And you may have, I don't know what it would do with, because the local cert is going to be self-signed, and so that'll be a little bit of an annoyance to get around.
Yeah, I think it handles the self-signed cert though, if I remember right. Because the demos that they usually show off with Codespaces show off a brand new .NET new template, which does nothing special for certs. Right? It's just .NET, what is it? Trust Dev Certs or .NET Dev Certs Trust or whatever it is. Cool. Well, sweet.
I feel like a Coalesce Pro now.
I mean,
by pro, I mean, I could start a project.
Well, yeah. So, and I will say this, Andrew. I don't know if you caught the beginning of the stream. Initially, I had planned to, go through the getting started and start from a already built project. But after I fixed my local stupid, I was remarkably impressed with how easy it was. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. We're starting from an empty directory. We'll go from there. So points awarded.
Yeah.
When your local DB install isn't completely dorked up, your getting started guide works great.
Yeah.
Does it use MS SQL by default? Did you just have that running already?
Yeah, if you have Visual Studio installed, then you have MS SQL local DB. Nobody ever accused Microsoft of being good at naming things. It's like a weird lightweight version. It's not like the developer edition of SQL. It's like this other thing that's special and limited in its own weird ways. And you just have it. If you have Visual Studio installed, it was already installed for you.
Cool.
Can I make one minor proposal while I have you, Andrew?
Sure.
I'm going to learn how to spell Coalesce real quick, and then where's the view template? There was one change I was like I really wanted to make, and I didn't. But I'm curious if you would like the change or not. So what I would love to do is in the web project, in the API settings, I would love to change Coalesce starter DB to Coalesce starter.view. What is the name of the?
Oh, something that'll get changed.
Yeah, because the first thing I did is I spun one with name A and one with name B, and then immediately conflicted with myself. And I went, "Dang nabbit!" It took me a minute to realize what was going on because I hadn't renamed the default application user class, and I'm like, "What the?" And then I realized what was going on. I'm like, "Oh, I'm an idiot." Okay.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. That's never occurred to me to actually change that. I mean, I've certainly run into that. I'm like, oh, I didn't change the database name.
Yeah, and that's because that was the first thing I did before I ran it. Is I went into here and I'm like, I'm just gonna tweak this off the default because I think I still have the default Coalesce one. I'm like, I'm just gonna separate it by app. That way it switches auto magically. I realized this thing would probably end up being like top priority.web, but yeah, whatever. I don't care. Something that follows the name. That was the only thing I'm like, I kind of want to go submit a PR for the template. So if you want, I'll go change your template for you and send a PR.
Yeah, have at it. And there's actually two places for that. There's right here, and then there's the development app DB context factory in the data project.
Oh, this guy here.
I'm wondering if we can, yeah. And I'm wondering actually if we should pivot away from this. Because, so you can run the EF tooling against the web project. And it'll actually like start your program CS and like do that and do your real configuration. And that's supposed to work. And usually it probably does work on a simple project. The development app, the I design time DB context factory. So that's another thing that the EF the EF tooling will look for, and it'll instantiate that and use that to pull a DB context out. And that's just another way of telling EF about your stuff, and it allows you to avoid having EF try to start your website, which it does a pretty good job of not actually starting your website. But if you have like extra stuff in your program CS that isn't just setting up services and setting up your request pipeline, then it can be a bit weird.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we should just kind of forego this path, because one of the downsides of using this development context factory is you end up in weird situations. We have this on a project right now where like one developer is on a Mac, and so they have a custom connection string because they're using SQL Server on a Mac, and so they can't use it. It's not Windows authentication, so they actually have to put in a username and password on their SQL Server in order to authenticate to it. So they have like their own special connection string that nobody else can use because everybody else is on Windows.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Is there a way to feed user secrets into the design time context?
I mean, you could just new up a configuration builder and
pull them in.
I actually do that on one of my projects, but I can't remember which one it is.
Seems like that would almost be the cleanest.
New up a configuration builder and then add in, called add user secrets and then pull it back out of there.
If you go that route, the one thing I've done on some of my templates that I really like is I'll have my .NET new template gen the GUID for me, and I'll put the same user secrets GUID in both projects or in like the directory build props as well. That way all of my projects get the same secrets, because I just get annoyed. I'm like, the user secrets are literally for me only. I don't want to respecify stuff multiple times, like everything in one. But so cool. I like it. Okay, well, I won't keep you guys any later than I have to. It is past 11. Any parting thoughts for people online, or people online want to pepper you with any quick questions? It's been
Thanks for joining
sort of
Cyber Loras. I think we got further than we would have, perhaps.
Yeah, it turns out when you have the author online, things go a lot quicker. But I think I agree with you. I really do kind of like this setup. So perfect. Well, thank you both for coming and joining. Thank you everyone for joining the stream. As always, it was fun. If you've got any questions, drop them in